what that what that approach does is it loses the sight that the customer experience has to travel across all of those silos. And so if there isn't a unilateral focus within the company to understand that customer experience is a holistic endeavor, that everyone has to be in the mindset of customer centricity and thinking through, okay, my small things are only one portion of the customer experience. And everything if our goal is as a group to have everything be in service of what that customer experience is, there needs to be collaboration and communication as the customer is traveling through these silos to then create that holistic experience. And so again, I think that the people who are like focused on operationalizing and making things more efficient have one goal and one focus, and it's losing the sight of the bigger picture. So I think one of the ways that companies can really make a big difference is understand that customer experience isn't like a singular project.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company in daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Rael. Ryan is a distinguished strategist specializing in fund development and customer experience for nonprofits and small mid-sized businesses. Leveraging his comprehensive knowledge of various technology platforms, including NetSuite, Shopify, Front, Salesforce, and HubSpot, he adeptly creates customized CRM solutions and optimizes operational workflows to foster scalable growth and enhance customer loyalty. With a proven track record of improving efficiencies and boosting revenue without increasing headcount, Ryan has empowered organizations to achieve significant growth by implementing tailored CX strategies. His dedication to enhancing customer satisfaction and streamlining processes is underscored by his roles as CEO of Fundraising for the Future and Principal Consultant at Tight Ship CX, along with previous positions focused on customer experience and operations management. Congrats on your dedication to enhancing customer satisfaction and streamlining processes, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Carl. I've been really excited to do this with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And one of the things I'm really excited to talk with you about is the importance of getting the right feedback when it comes to improving client experiences, because I imagine that companies initially, when they set them up, have an idea of what they think people want, but then as most things happen, like especially in marketing and stuff, the reality of that experience is not always how it is initially planned. So how do people need to be open to feedback, or how can they get the right feedback to make sure they're actually delivering the experience they're intending?
Yeah, it's a great question. You kind of hit on something really important, is that there's a lot of guesswork that currently happens at the leadership level. My experience when I come in and work with most organizations is that, when they originally founded, they had a really close relationship with their customer base, right? Think startup. The founder is probably having every single conversation with every new customer as they're beginning to grow. When you reach a certain point, there are then more and more layers of separation between the executives or the leadership within the company and your actual customer base. And so what I actually find is that the conversations actually shift away from customer experience in most instances and more, into some of the operational revenue type conversations and what are we doing to ultimately improve the business. And the customer no longer has that seat at the table that they kind of once did. And so as much as I wish, you framed up the question as like, what are some ways that we can improve on customer experience? Step one is actually focusing and actually considering the customer for the first time, because again, so many of these decisions are gut feeling. I think this is the right move we should make, right? This operational change, this new technology, this shift in process, this new marketing endeavor, this is going to be what our customers want. And when I ask those founders, oh, are you sure? Do you know? How do you know that that's the right move? Most of the time it's just, well, I don't know. It just feels like the right move, as opposed to actually validating, hey, do your customers actually think that this new tool, this new process, this new product is going to solve their problems, is going to make their lives better, is going to make your company more enticing? And so step one for me is just actually taking the time to figure out, hey, can we validate this in some way? any assumption that I'm making about the business, is there a way for me to validate that this is actually something that our customers need, want, or value?
Yeah, it's a great point because I think there's the with those multiple levels of separation or any levels of separation as the company's growing, the decision makers are no longer the ones that are really up to date with what the customers are actually experiencing and feeling. And so I'd imagine the first step for a leader would be to talk to the frontline team and go, okay, what's your sense? And then going and talking to having some people talk to the actual clients and get their input, because there's this, I can see it going bad in so many ways. And I'm sure there's been a lot of that happening with, and I've heard like reports about it, like all of the AI innovation that companies are kind of throwing into their products, thinking that, oh, this is going to be what people actually want. But a lot of users or like the customers don't really like the AI or didn't ask for it, and especially don't want to pay more for something that they didn't ask for, don't really care about. And so it's, what's kind of your approach to getting that feedback, or at least getting the right feedback? Because if you just go out and like do like a semi attempt at getting feedback and claim you did it well, then it could still backfire. But what have you found is like the best practices for getting this sort of feedback?
Yeah, there's a couple ways I think my brain initially wants to go about answering those questions. The first one is to kind of share a story, kind of going back to your AI example, in that, I had a client recently. They introduced these new AI chatbots basically on their site to help triage so that way they can have 24/7 support and they don't necessarily need to add headcount. And it's an understandable, great initiative from an operational standpoint. And they were stoked at first, right? Because then they're seeing, hey, these, tickets that we're getting, we got 750 over the past week, and all of them were answered by AI. And how amazing, how exciting. But when I came in and wanted to dig and actually understand, okay, what is the actual business impact that this is happening? Yes, we had the operational incentive from it. But on the back end, when we did some research to kind of figure out what were people reaching out for in the first place, almost 80% of those 750 inquiries were order statuses. And so my thoughts there is, sure, someone reached out, they wanted order status, they received it. How awesome and how exciting. At the same time, when you're putting yourself in the client's shoes, why are they having to reach out for order status in the first place, right? We're adding a layer for them to kind of come in. There's some level of dissatisfaction that, or curiosity at the very least, to then figure out, hey, what the heck is going on with my order? That's already a point where you're kind of understanding where the customers, where they're at in their shoes. Not a positive one, or at the very least, they're lukewarm about the experience because they're having to come and get their status. And yay, woohoo, they got their status. But again, why are they having to do that in the first place? Is there any sort of root cause analysis that you're doing to kind of ensure that any of the tools that you're doing are actually giving customers, again, what they need, want, and value? Should the investment have been on being proactive about getting people statuses on their updates instead of how do we triage when they have an issue downstream? And yes,
That's very interesting. The difference between having that reactive mindset to a proactive mindset, and not really understanding what the data was showing. And it wasn't, they saw it as, oh, this is a great tool because we're able to respond better. And you saw it as, you have a problem that is emerging, and you have an opportunity to be more proactive and avoid this problem in the first place. But instead and actually make it a win, because you're giving people what they want before they even know they want it, or avoiding the frustration of where's my order. And instead they saw it as a way to be reactive. And I think that sort of, that difference in mindset speaks volumes.
totally. And again, I don't even fault them, right? If they're saying like, hey, historically, we used to have agents that had to respond to these 750 inquiries over the weekend, kind of a thing. They're seeing that as dollars, right? And now we had AI do this, and sure, there's some level of investment for AI, but like, look at all those savings. We didn't have people have to do this. In most cases, I think my philosophical approach, especially on the support environment, is sure, stuff happens, but my mind goes to like, is there any utopic world that we can get to where there are no support inquiries, right? We do everything so that way everything does work functionally. And if there are things that are coming in, I don't want that same issue to continue to be a problem. And so we'll solve that issue using that. But yeah, the customers are generally, giving you feedback as to here's what problem was. And generally you can go further and further upstream to have solved that problem. But I mentioned a bit ago that I think there was like two ways that my mind went to kind of approach that. And I think they do work hand in hand. Most companies, when you get to a certain size, really start to silo their operations. Marketing is so focused on marketing, sales is so focused on sales, engineering on engineering, support on support, et cetera, et cetera. And success metrics are built for all of those leaders to be successful in their singular avenues. What that approach does is it loses the sight that the customer experience has to travel across all of those silos. And so if there isn't a unilateral focus within the company to understand that customer experience is a holistic endeavor, that everyone has to be in the mindset of customer centricity and thinking through, okay, my small things are only one portion of the customer experience. And everything if our goal is as a group to have everything be in service of what that customer experience is, there needs to be collaboration and communication as the customer is traveling through these silos to then create that holistic experience. And so again, I think that the people who are like focused on operationalizing and making things more efficient have one goal and one focus, and it's losing the sight of the bigger picture. So I think one of the ways that companies can really make a big difference is understand that customer experience isn't like a singular project. There isn't a singular stakeholder for that within the organization. It needs to be a wall-to-wall focus and a wall-to-wall endeavor across all departments.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm going to describe it a lot as you're trying to build a relationship with the customers to keep them to bring them in and have them stay long term.
Yeah.
But for them, it's like they're getting into a relationship with someone with multiple personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Where marketing feels one way and sales feels another way, and
Yeah.
then client success feels another way, and then when they get support team feels a different way, and they don't really know what to expect. It's hard for them to build trust because everything's so disjointed and feels so different. And it does come down to these different silos have different metrics and different goals, and they're not incentivized or prioritizing the client. They're just trying to get their own metrics to look good for their own reasons, and they're not doing the handoffs well. They're not consistently matching the same tone. They're not using the same languages. All these problems that add friction and add red flags that they're going to scare off these clients or keep them from buying or renewing and all that stuff, because it's obvious to them that there's not this customer centricity or the client centricity that you mentioned is so important. And it is, I think, a big problem as companies grow, but it's something that I know there's, I've had people talking on the show about how they're building tools that help with some of the handoff, but I think it's not, again, something that you can just slap a tool on and expect it to bridge these gaps. It's really about working with the leaders of each of these silos and creating KPIs or metrics and goals that are, like I said, the umbrella goals for the entire business, not just for individual departments, and getting them all on the same page. And it's not like an overnight shift. It could definitely be a challenge, especially if it's company's been around a while and people are kind of used to their different metrics. But the upside of putting in that work and getting those different departments working together and having similar KPIs and seeing how they all fit together will make overall the client experience better, which makes the business a lot more successful.
Totally. Yeah. And I think one of the ways to kind of simplify it is, when you're talking about silos and you're talking about competing priorities, the main problem you have to solve is there has to be almost a singular priority. And I know it's easy for me to say from the outside because, of course, finance is going to want to focus on finance things and operations is going to want to focus on operations things. But when we're talking about this cross departmentally, my goal when I'm speaking with leadership teams is like, if we had to boil things down to as close to a singular metric as possible, what would the success of the company look like? Right. And some people would say revenue, some people would say your bottom line, some people would say NPS scores, whatever the case is, whatever you want to say that it is. What's generally become the general foundation that I found is your net customers acquired, your net customers retained. And I say that to say, like, every executive meeting should kind of start with, if that's our main competing priority, because keeping customers and gaining customers is going to help us increase that revenue. It's going to help us with the bottom line. It's going to help with all those other things. Then that should be what everything else is in service of. And if we're always really focusing and simplifying it on those two metrics, of course, that's not to say you can't report on anything else. You should report on those other things. But if number one is, this is our primary goal, then everything that accounting is doing, everything that customer success is doing, everything that marketing is doing is in service of that larger number. There is more ability to be collaborative while also focusing on your internal priorities. But priority number one is, are we doing is this going to be something that's in service of either acquiring a new customer or keeping the ones that we have? If the answer is yes, then it's probably something that's worth pursuing.
I really like that because it does seem like a hurdle for a lot of these different teams on companies to pick and agree upon a single, or in this case, a couple metrics that actually encompass all the different departments and their differing priorities. And it makes, now that you mention it, it's one of those, like, it's so simple. It's like kind of chef's kiss brilliant, where it's like, if the more customers you're attracting and the more you're keeping, one, it makes the focus on the people that the relationships you're building. And it does give you that holistic view, or a holistic lens to look through and analyze all the other metrics that are existing. And also, like you said, you can easily kind of vet ideas or proposed changes to, okay, like, if we're going to do this, how's it likely going to affect these two key metrics? And you can easily kind of sift through a bunch of different ideas to make sure ones that you're on that, staying on track and towards that vision of adding more of the right people and keeping the ones around that you already have.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like lost for words how elegantly beautiful and simple that is, because it seems like I wasn't sure what you're going to say until you said it. Now that you said it, I'm like, that's a no-brainer. Why didn't I, how could I not have thought it before? That makes so much sense. So
Sure.
Absolutely love that.
Well, thank you. And I will say, like, for anyone who's like listening and is thinking like, well, what about this? What about that? Like, of course, like I mentioned, it's not the end all be all, but in most cases, if you're thinking about like whatever priority you have, is it in service of that? It's probably going to be the right way to go about it. Because again, your legal team or your AR team is going to want to cut a customer because they're really bad at not hitting their terms or whatever. Like, I get it. There are going to be exceptions, but for the most part, if most of your organizational objectives are in terms of gaining and acquiring customers and understanding the net value of that, you're going to lead to more success and a more collaborative team. Because I can always go back to, hey, finance, we're really getting strict and fighting with the customer about how they sent this PO over. I know that that's a priority for you, but like, in the grand scheme of things, right? Is it worth causing friction in this relationship to have that one comma done the right way, or this sent in a PDF format versus a JPEG format, or whatever, like, at the end of the day, is this one thing going to be worth ruffling some feathers, right? And if the answer is yes, awesome, then let's go about it. But if not, right, like, it's easier to have dialogue when unilaterally I can say, hey, engineering, remember, our number one goal are these two metrics, right? We're, as a team, building towards that, and it just allows for more communication and collaboration.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned about how, like, having to cut a client or customer, and I think that's why when I was reframing it, I mentioned, like, how do you keep more of your best clients or attract more of your best clients? Because if you want to frame like how do we justify cutting a bad client, it's like, well, it frees up your time and resources to help the right clients that are better for your business, because they're like the ones that are taking up so much of your team's time and energy, they're not able to serve the better clients. I mean, so
Yeah.
there's a way of looking at that it's still in service of those two metrics. But that's I love that example. I think it's one of those aha moments for hopefully a lot of people listening, and that mindset shift can solve a ton of the challenges in getting teams unsiloed and getting everyone on the same track and able to communicate, like I said, using shared values and a shared goal that can really unite a business behind a common language that allows for a lot more synergy and collaboration across these existing silos. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Ryan. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Ryan, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.